Hey, all right, so we're 5 weeks in. We finally have our first batch of tests. Um, so right off the bat, first, I know that that sounds like really intimidating that you've got two tests in the same week. So just, it's not as bad as it sounds. Let me give you a couple things to think about. Number one, most of this information is the same for both of the tests. So like, for example, you had to know the different body cavities for the lecture exam. We covered that in chapter 1 in the lecture. You have to know the different directional terms like superior and inferior. You have to know the different body regions. For the lecture exam, that's the same stuff you're going to see on the lab exam too. It's just you'll have like pictures and you'll have to visually identify those things. So don't think of it as I've got like two different tests to study for. It's the same material. You're just going to get to use that information twice. All right. Same thing, we had to know the tissues. Now, you don't have to identify any of the tissues for the lecture exam on Monday and Tuesday, but we still covered those same tissues in both the lab and the lecture. So for the lab exam on Thursday and Friday, all you have to do is know how to like visually identify them. But that information is not completely different. It's the same. We talked about a lot of those characteristics in the lecture and in the lab. All right. Another thing, remember, and this is just, I know some of you are going to panic because this always happens. The lecture exam is a 100-point test, regular test. The lab exams in this class are only 50 points. So I split them up. Usually, I know like some instructors just give you one lab midterm and one lab final, and it's like big, 70, 80 questions, and they're 100 points. What I did instead was I took the lab material and I split it up into 5 smaller tests, and they're only going to be 50 points apiece. So think of it as like a test and a half, if that makes you feel any better. Okay. A couple things real quick before I get into the test. Let's see. It is Friday at like 10 a.m. the week before all of this stuff is due. So what I did last night, because the tests are coming up pretty soon, I looked at the lecture videos and I just kind of went through and checked which students had at least opened the lecture videos, which of you had watched it and who hadn't. And not gonna lie, I got kind of bummed out because what I noticed was that there was a lot of students that either didn't watch any of the lecture videos yet, like 3 days before the test, you still hadn't watched the lecture videos, or maybe you only watched one or you skipped one of them. Now, number one, if you're watching this early enough, like this video is going to go out on Saturday, so if you're watching this over the weekend, you've got time to start studying. Don't put it off in next time. But you do have time to go back and review these, all right, review the lecture videos. I know I mentioned this back in chapter 1. Anatomy is not one of those subjects where you can hear it one time and you're like, okay, that makes sense, I've got it. You do have to spend time with it. You've got to study and you've got to kind of repeat and go over it that way. So if you'll follow those things, if you will space it out next time, that's going to be a lot better way to make sure that you kind of understand the material. The other thing that kind of makes me nervous, I did not review the lab videos yet, but I've just got a feeling if a lot of you weren't watching the lecture videos, you might not have watched the lab videos either. So the lecture test is the first thing you need to focus on. As soon as that is over, as soon as you finish that, shift your focus and start looking at the lab material, especially if you skipped any of those lab videos. Watch them. Again, it's not ideal to have to learn this in 2 days. You need to spread it out over like several weeks. Like when I assign them is when you need to watch them. But you do have time to go back and kind of review and hopefully learn that. It's going to make it harder on you, so next time don't do that. But and even if you've been watching them, even if you've watched the lecture and the lab videos the way that you're supposed to, you still got time to study and send me any questions you have too. All right? Okay, so let's go through real quick. Monday and Tuesday is the lecture exam. So that is right at 60, I think it's 61 questions. The way that the test is set up, there's a matching section where you answer like a bunch of questions in one. So it's going to say there's like 57, I think, but it ends up being like 60 or 61 questions on that test. Multiple choice, there's one matching. There's a few that will have like a visual thing for you to identify. I know in the chapter 1 lecture videos I mentioned that, but the abdominal regions, like the 9 abdominal regions, you'll see a picture where you'll just have to identify which one is indicated. And then the body cavities, you'll have a diagram where you're going to have to be able to, that's the matching section where you have to match the body cavities with the correct name. All right. Other than that, they're all multiple choice. It's timed. You've got a minute per question. That is way more than enough time. I've been given some tests in my other classes, and all the tests have been about 60 questions. So an hour is what you have to take the test. Most everyone's getting done in less than 20 minutes. If you know the material, that's way more time than you're going to need. If you don't know the material, you can have all the time in the world and it's not going to matter. So that's plenty of time. Just make sure that you study and you're prepared for it. And then one more, and I know I keep stressing this, and that's fine. You can say like I'm being whatever, too picky about it. I'll take that. But when you are starting up the test, when you go through that startup sequence, you really have to pay attention to the instructions, especially on the environment video and then the additional instructions. Read those and pay attention. Do not just click through them, all right? The environment video is going to remind you, number one, you need to be at a desk or a table, and you need to have that surface cleared away. Nothing out, no phones, notes, anything like that. Show the surface in front of you, and then just a quick 360 of your environment, all right? If you read the syllabus, you have to do that to get credit. All right. So that's why I know that sounds like I'm being picky, but the thing is, I've got about 35 students in this class. I've got 3 other classes with 35 students, and I've got to go through and review those videos. So if you'll show me that your area is clear, I can go through and review your video a lot better. If you hide it, if you don't show me what's there, I'm going to be I'm not trying to catch you cheating, I promise. I want you to do well, and I'm not like sitting here in my office saying, who can I give a 0 to today? But if you don't show me the area around you, like when the instructions clearly said to do that, it takes me a lot longer to review your video and make sure that everything's okay. And again, like I said, you can not get credit for skipping that. Like that's a reason to not get credit for an exam, is if you skip the environment video or if you don't follow those instructions. So sorry, I'm done with that. We'll move on. Just make sure that you pay attention to those instructions and that you follow those instructions, all right? And then, like I said, when you're done, the additional instructions are going to tell you things like don't add anything to your environment. Make sure you're looking at your computer. Respondus actually has, like, it'll track your face to make sure that you're watching the computer. So if you spend your whole test doing that or that, it's going to flag it, and it's going to show me, you were missing from the frame or you were looking away. And again, that could be an issue. So just follow those instructions. All right, now I'm done, I promise. The weeks that I've been giving you the videos to watch, I mentioned something called a Learn Smart assignment, and that was actually, there was a video you were supposed to watch a couple weeks ago. But if you go over to the tab to the left where it says Learn Smart Bonus, if you'll click on there, there's a video that explains these assignments for you. But it's basically a way for you to study and get credit, get some bonus points for it. Learn Smart comes with Connect, and it's a system where you can read through the different parts of the book, and then it's going to ask you review questions, and it's going to keep asking you until you can get them right. Now, if you'll do that, I think there's 50 questions per assignment. You're going to get 3 bonus points if you complete all of those 50 questions. I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but if you get 3 points for chapter 1 and 3 points for chapter 5, and then we've got 3 other lecture exams, that ends up being like 24 bonus points you can get for studying. Like you're getting points for doing the thing you're supposed to do anyway. That can absolutely make a letter grade difference at the end of the semester if you'll do those. All right, so take advantage of that, do that. Not only are you going to get bonus points, but you're going to do better on the test because you've spent that time studying. All right. So just a reminder, both of those assignments are due Tuesday the 15th. That's when the test is over, so you have to get them done by then. All right. Then finally, the lab exam. It's on body organization and tissues, tissue identification. Those were in the lab tab to the left. Again, last couple weeks you've had those videos to watch, that assignment to do. So it's going to be the body organization one. You've got a study guide if you click on that lab exam 1 folder, and it'll remind you what you need to know. You've got a video for body organization, and it's going to walk through the different body cavities and different terms and terminology and things like that for the human body. So just review that. You've got a PowerPoint that can be really helpful to review too. And then for the tissue identification, remember, all that is we had microscope images of different tissue types. Hey, something happened with the video. I'm sorry. So the tissue identification, you had microscope images of different tissue types, and you had to be able to identify what type of tissue you're looking at. You also need to know what category it falls into. So is it epithelial tissue or connective or muscular or nervous tissue? All right. So there's a video that explains all of that. There's also a PowerPoint that helps you study that too. Just remember, the big difference is the lecture exam was multiple choice and matching. The lab exams in this class, every single lab exam we have, you have to type in the name. So like if it shows you a picture of adipose tissue, it's going to say name this tissue or identify this tissue, and then there's going to be a blank for you to type the name in. So adipose. All right. There might be a follow-up question that says, what category does this belong to? So you would type in connective tissue, because adipose is a type of connective tissue. All right. So you do have to do the names. That's going to be the same. The next thing we're going to do in lab after this test are the bones. So when we go through the different names of the bones and the bone markings, you have to know the name and be able to type it out. And spelling does count. Listen, I know that sounds picky, but spelling counts. The reason we're so strict on that now is that our nursing program actually had to send us like a memo that said, you really need to be working on spelling with these students, because a lot of the students that were getting accepted into nursing had a really hard time spelling body parts that they should definitely know. The reason that's a problem is, as if you're in the medical field, you're going to have to take notes that go on people's medical records. And if you misspell a name, that can actually mean something different. Like there's a lot of terms that if you get a couple letters flipped around, it actually means something totally different. So you do have to take some time to learn how to spell those too, because that's going to be important later on. All right. So that's it for this week. Just those exams, you don't have any lectures or anything, lab videos to watch. So just focus on those, get through it. Let me know if you have any questions. Last thing, I sent out a memo, or I sent out an announcement about Respondus. They did some type of an update with Blackboard, and there were a few issues where, not all, but some students, for some reason, it was asking them for a password, even though there wasn't supposed to be a password there. So I sent an announcement, but just a reminder, number one, make sure you are using Respondus Lockdown Browser. If you try to take the test using Chrome or Firefox, it's not going to let you. It's going to ask you for a password, but it's not going to let you in, even if you type in the one I gave you. So number one, you have to use Respondus. Number two, the way I understand it's going to work is if you do have that issue, it might just let you take the test no problem if you're using Respondus. But if you do have that issue, what's going to happen is you're going to go through, you'll take your picture, your student ID, you'll do your environment video, and then when you go to take the test, it's going to ask you for a password then. All right. So if it does that, your password is just going to be GSCC, so Gadsden State Community College, GSCC, all caps. All right, if you type that in, that should let you take the test. Like I said, I don't know what the issue is. Hopefully they'll get that figured out. But for this week, for both of those tests, make sure that you do GSCC for your password. All right. Sorry, that was a lot, but tests are important, so I just wanted to make sure we go through all that. If you have any questions, let me know, and I'll be glad to help. Thanks.